Okay. So when Hurricane Harvey was on its way in, we hadn't ever experienced a hurricane. It wasn't supposed to be coming toward Houston too much. They expected some rain, but so we went and Emily got food, and we got some extra things. And
Actually, as time went on, they kept reporting it was going to be more and more serious. So I actually went to the store like 3 different times
yeah.
to get more food and then
Yeah.
more food and then more food.
And then we thought, maybe we should fill up the bathtub with water too, just in case. They say fill up so you have some drinking water or wash your hands in it if water gets shut off. So we started making some of those preparations, not too intensely, I guess, but enough. But then the rain started coming, got a little harder. After the first day, we had 3.5 inches or more, 5 inches of rain.
3.5.
3.5.
It wasn't that much.
It all sat in our backyard. It didn't go anywhere. And so in the backyard's holding water, but our front yard is fine and the street is
The water
clear.
was lapping at our back door.
Yeah, we're like,
after 3.5 inches.
This is not good. So we built up a wall in the back with extra bricks, and friends came over, and to make a little like wall and behind our house, friends came over. We dug a ditch, a trench all the way from the backyard to the front, and that was amazing. It just let all the water out. And then finally, after a couple days, it just started filling up. Our street became a river. I mean, literally, you walk into it and it was pushing you over. But it started creeping up on our driveway, and it was within probably 8 or 9 feet of our driveway. And then it would go down, and then it would come up to 12 feet, or 12 feet away, 8 feet away, and then it was just coming back and forth. Our neighbor said it's the highest he's ever seen, and the creek couldn't keep up. And so our street became a tributary of the creek, which is crazy because the sewers were completely full. There's no more room in the sewers. It had to go somewhere on land.
Started moving all of as much as we could up higher, preparing for water in our house. We have a loft, not a 2-story house, but a loft. So we were able to move a bunch of like really important stuff up to the loft and
ready to sleep there. We were moving everything we needed to sleep there for the night in case we needed to.
We had stopped for just to take a breather, and we were playing the game Trouble with the boys. We have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and so we were playing Trouble with them, and then we heard no power, so everything's really quiet except for the rain, and we heard this big huge truck, and we knew that no cars are getting through. The water is really deep on our street, and so we ran to the front door to go look, and it was the National Guard. They were knocking on people's doors and inviting them to come with them. Do you want to evacuate? And
we kind of looked at each other and we're like,
we didn't have power. We didn't know how much higher the water was going to get. And
I gotta be honest.
Still raining.
I gotta be honest. There's a little guy pride for a second, like we can do this. You know what I mean? We're gonna be okay. It's not a big deal. We don't need to be rescued. Like it's still 10. We still got 6 feet. There's just a little bit of that. And then I looked at my wife and I was like, our 2 little boys, and there's no power, and our dog. And I'm like, what if 2 a.m. the power's out and the water's coming into our house? What do we do then?
So we grabbed whatever we could and we jumped on the back. We had to cross some of the water in the street to get to the truck, and it was like mid-thigh to me.
Yeah.
We were carrying the boys, and it was raining.
And
we
Addie.
get on there. We're the first people on the uncovered truck, and they said, we are driving around your neighborhood until we're full, and then we'll take you to the shelter. But the devastation that we were seeing, especially once we got to the back of our neighborhood where the creek is, and the water was way higher in those houses, and I really saw a lot of the devastation, and that's where it just broke my heart, just how bad it was. But we got to the shelter.
We got there.
And then all of the dry clothes that we had brought were soaked because we spent an hour and a half on them. But at the shelter, they had clean, dry clothes of every size, tons of shoes.
They were amazing. Not long after there, we posted on Facebook, and we had at least half a dozen friends going, we're going to get you. We're going to find a way across the creek or around the creek. Or finally, we found someone that was not one of those people.
We just got word a few hours ago that our power is back on finally at our house. we were able to check on our house. We didn't have any water in our house. In fact, at the point where we evacuated was the highest point of the water. And we'll be back at the house tomorrow.
So I was just thinking, as I hear you tell that, and as our church has been talking about prayer, today we're talking about how God answers prayers, and what about when it seems He doesn't? Can you guys kind of paint a picture of what maybe some of the specifics that you remember praying for in the midst of some of that stuff, and like, did God answer your prayers?
One thing we didn't tell you about was that we were running across a lot of tornado warnings, and several came straight through our city of Cyprus, and that part was really scary. I remember vividly praying for protection during that when we were huddled in the bathroom with the boys, and praying especially for our 6-year-old. He gets really anxious about things, and I didn't want it to be a really scary situation. I remember praying with him in the bathroom and just praying for our safety, and that God surrounds us with His protective arms. And I remember before the flooding, like before the hurricane even hit, before we even had rain, just praying that we would be safe and that our house would be protected. But I think as time went on, the house prayers stopped mattering as much. Like I was like, well, if something happens to the house, it's just stuff, and we can replace that, and people will help us. And we don't have flood insurance, but we know lots of people who want to help. And yeah, I don't want it to happen, but God's got this. And I think with prayer that a lot of times as you draw closer to God, that the desires of your heart change, and you start to realize the importance of different things, and you draw closer to Him, and you're more in line with the will that He has for your life. And so your prayers change, because at first you're praying for one thing, and then as you're closer to Him and you're relying on Him, He leads you on the path that He wants you to be on.
And I would say mine was led from the house thing to protect this house. Guardian angels. I remember saying guardian angels with like shields of like airtight protection around our house from the water. I mean, specifically praying for that, like that would be a hedge, of protection. And then I remember hearing God almost speak words into my prayer, like His words coming about life, and not about protecting the house, but I want to protect life. I am a God of life, not necessarily a God of stuff. I want life. And so I started hearing, hearing about people just barely surviving and getting out. I'm like, take care of my family, protect our lives, so that then we can care for others. And I started hearing that, like, keep our house dry so that we can have the time and capacity to care for other people.
The desires that we had at the beginning were very much like me-centric, and then it became like God was opening our eyes to look at the community around us and the ways that the people He was leading us to through that. The other family that evacuated with us, that we stayed with the first night, they're not believers, and we got placed in a home with them where we were able to pray with them, where we were able to their apartment flooded halfway up on their first floor, and so they likely lost everything. Their cars are underwater. I mean, just and being able, now we're Facebook friends and we have a relationship with them, and we can, that like there's just things like that God just works through these ways. And like the prayer isn't necessarily at first the thing that even matters the most. That as He goes through that with you and you're in line with Him and you're thinking, God's got this, then the other things start going into place, and He takes you in a place that you maybe never would have imagined that you would be.